All right, so a lot of people think the prices of chicken eggs are going up, but the price of chicken meat is staying flat, and that's proof that this is some kind of conspiracy. It's not. Let's get into it. For those who don't know me, my name is Chris. I'm a co-founder of Blackbird Farms, and we grow and sell about $1 million worth of regenerative food every year. Now, there's really three main reasons that bird flu is hitting eggs, but it's not hitting chicken meat so much, and you're going to want to stick around for the third one. The first reason is really straightforward, and that's that avian influenza really doesn't hit young chickens as hard as it does older chickens. And broiler chickens like this one, which are raised specifically for meat, they're slaughtered between 6 and 9 weeks of age generally. They're usually just too young for those diseases to really hit them. That's as opposed to these ladies who have their eggs harvested between 6 months and 2 years of age, so they're older and they're more susceptible to the disease. The second reason is all about chicken economics, and again, this one is pretty straightforward. On our farm, on average, this meat chicken is going to get us about $22.50 in revenue, whereas this hen is going to produce about $200 in revenue. Other thing you got to remember, these guys have that whole $22.50 harvested all at once between 6 and 9 weeks. On the other hand, you don't make a dime off this little girl until she's about 6 months old, and you don't get the full recoup of what you've put into this hen until they've laid their last egg at around 2 years old. So the egg-laying hens are more valuable. It takes longer to get the value out of them, and it takes longer to replace them if something happens. This is kind of like the difference between, let's say you had a stock clerk at a liquor store who dropped a case of Maker's Mark versus dropping a case of Macallan 18. They would have to raise prices more and longer to make up for the case of Macallan 18 versus the case of Maker's. Now, it's at this point that a lot of people ask a really good question. They say, I understand that the broiler chickens, the meat chickens, have a shorter life cycle, but they come from eggs just like everybody else. So if it's the eggs that are being affected, then how isn't there an interruption in the supply of the eggs that hatch out the meat chickens? And this is the part where maybe you need to grab a chair, because you're about to learn something today. Now, most people understand that the eggs that you get on your table come from farms that look like this, or like this, or if you buy from my farm, it looks like this. But the thing you gotta ask yourself is, where do these chickens come from? This is where it gets crazy. The eggs that produce these chickens that are laying the eggs that go on your table, those eggs don't come from this farm. In the chicken world, there are production farms and there are breeding farms. The production farms are where the eggs that you eat come from. The breeding farms are where the eggs that are hatched into the chickens that are used by the production farms, that's where those come from. The production farms are run by independent farmers who are usually contracted out to some kind of aggregator or what's called an integrator, which is somebody that buys eggs like a Cal-Maine or a Tyson. And how these guys manage their farms, especially when it comes to biosecurity, which we're going to get to in a minute, it's really up to the individual farmer. So now, you know how people are all concerned about the corporate takeover of agriculture and how corporations are going to take over farming, food, and all that stuff? Well, that's already happened in the breeding space. Breeding chickens that can dress out at 5 or 6 pounds or that can lay 300 plus eggs per year is a really precise science where you have really specific and highly tuned genetic purebreds that you cross with other purebreds to create hybrids like the Cornish cross or like the sex links that you saw in the other image. That kind of precision and science and expense is backed by corporations, some like Aviagen or Cobb Vantress, which is owned by Tyson. So where the production side is really going to vary in terms of like biosecurity measures and how things are managed from farm to farm, because that part of the industry is federated over all these independent family farms for the most part. That kind of rustic old McDonald feel is going to be replaced with something that feels a little bit more like the lab environment in Jurassic Park. Things are a lot more controlled because things are corporate, there's a lot more standards, there's a lot more money. So if you're bird flu and you're trying to break into a flock through its biosecurity weaknesses, then trying to break into the production farms where everything is independent is kind of like going to a parking lot outside of an apartment complex and just checking the doors. You're probably going to find one that's unlocked. You might even find a couple where the keys are up over the dash or maybe even in the ignition. Whereas if you were to go to, say, a Hertz or an Avis where a rental car keeps their stuff in their parking lot, everything is really standardized. Everybody has to follow the same set of protocols. Those doors are probably locked, the keys are probably not anywhere near the car, and you're just not getting in. So it's for that reason that even though bird flu is wreaking havoc on the production flocks like this, we're not having that much of an issue replacing them with hatching eggs from the breeding farms, because there's basically a firewall between them. So, I hope that's clear as mud. Follow me, buy my book if you want to learn more about how agriculture really works, and if you live near me, buy some food at blackbirdcoop.com.